My name is Dr. Elias Rourke, and if you're hearing this, it means I failed. It means they got to me, but maybe, just maybe, you can still listen and maybe you can understand. We were never supposed to see it. I was the lead physicist aboard the Ouroboros, a deep space research vessel on a classified mission beyond the edges of our mapped galaxy. Funded by the Galactic Science Division, our objective was simple: probe the fabric of reality itself. The Ouroboros was equipped with the most advanced quantum observation technology humanity had ever devised, machines designed to look deeper than ever before into the quantum substrate of the universe. We thought we were seeking the origins of the cosmos. Instead, we found the cracks in the walls of our reality. It started with an experiment. We had been observing a strange phenomenon that had puzzled physicists for centuries: the double-slit experiment. If you're not familiar with it, here's the short version. When you fire a single particle at two slits, it behaves like a wave when unobserved, creating an interference pattern. But the moment you try to measure it, the pattern collapses, and the particle behaves like a solid object instead. This, of course, makes no sense. It implies that observation alone changes reality. But what we found on the Ouroboros was far, far worse. We set up an advanced variation of the experiment, one that eliminated all possible errors. This time, we fired particles through the slits while the ship's AI observed the results instead of a human. And yet, the moment we switched the AI on, the pattern collapsed. That shouldn't have happened. An artificial system observing reality should not have altered its structure. Unless, of course, the universe wasn't real. Something outside of it was monitoring what we did. We ran the experiment again, and again, and again. Every time, the same results. The moment a conscious observer, biological or artificial, measured reality, it changed. It was as if the universe was rendering itself only when watched, the way a computer simulation loads data as you move through a virtual world. We reported our findings to command. That was the first mistake. The first sign that something was wrong came 3 days later. Our ship's primary systems began failing at random. Glitches in our navigation, brief losses of gravity, even strange distortions in time itself. At first, we thought it was mechanical failure. But then, crew members started disappearing. I don't mean they died. I mean they vanished. One moment, they were standing right in front of you. The next, gone. No screams, no blood, just erased. We checked the ship's logs. According to the system, those people had never existed. That was when we realized something was watching us. Something new we had seen too much. It happened on the 8th day. I was reviewing the quantum data in the ship's main observatory when I saw him. A figure, standing outside the ship, in the vacuum of space. No suit, no helmet, just standing there, watching me. His body flickered like a broken hologram. 1 second, he was a man. The next, he was a shifting cascade of symbols and static, a fractured piece of code struggling to maintain its form. Then, without warning, the lights cut out, and a voice, distorted, inhuman, whispered through the speakers. You weren't supposed to see this. And then, the screaming began. The Ouroboros was not just any starship. She was humanity's most sophisticated scientific vessel, a floating city of knowledge constructed at the bleeding edge of technology. She stretched over 4 kilometers long, a sleek behemoth of dark alloy and quantum plating, humming with the silent song of dark matter reactors. Within her halls, some of the finest minds of our generation worked tirelessly, seeking truths that had eluded scholars and philosophers for millennia. But knowledge comes at a price, and we had paid in something far more precious than we realized. After the double-slit anomaly, our reality aboard the Ouroboros had begun to degrade. Systems that once operated flawlessly were now unreliable, unpredictable, as though the ship itself had become infected with the same quantum corruption we had uncovered. More troubling than the glitches in machinery, however, were the glitches in us. Crew members, vital personnel, had disappeared, not in any logical way, but in a manner that defied reality itself. Entire sections of the ship, previously bustling with researchers, now existed as empty halls, their names absent from logs, their very existence erased from memory, except for those of us who still remembered them. And then, there was the figure outside the ship. I was the chief physicist aboard the Ouroboros, specializing in quantum mechanics and fundamental reality theory. The mission had been my life's work. I had spent decades unraveling the nature of space-time, building a career on the principle that the universe was a construct of consistent physical laws. That belief had been shattered. After I saw the man in the void, I knew, instinctively, that we had uncovered something we were never meant to see. I reviewed the surveillance footage from the ship's external cameras. There was nothing there. No record of the flickering entity that had stood beyond the observation window. No trace of his presence. But I knew what I had seen. The memory was burned into my mind, as vivid as the moment it happened. The figure had glitched, his form flickering like an error in a digital image, momentarily breaking apart into shifting symbols, as if he were made of raw, unstable data rather than flesh and blood. And then, there had been the voice. You weren't supposed to see this. It hadn't come from any of the ship's communication systems. It hadn't come from the emergency PA. It had come from everywhere and nowhere at once. And then, the ship had plunged into darkness. When the lights returned, the ship's emergency klaxons were wailing in a shrill, artificial voice, bathing the halls in a pulsing red glow. Warning. Reality stability error. Warning. System data corruption detected. That was new. No emergency protocol, not even during catastrophic reactor failure, had ever triggered that message before. I rushed to the bridge. Commander Lena Volkov was already there, her sharp gaze locked onto the holographic display before her. Volkov was a woman of iron discipline, ex-military, with a demeanor as cold as the void outside. But when she turned to face me, I saw something I had never seen in her before. Fear. Rourke, she said, her voice tight, controlled. We have a situation. That was an understatement. The Ouroboros star maps had changed. The ship's navigation system, programmed to track our precise location relative to known celestial bodies, was malfunctioning. According to our instruments, we were exactly where we had been before, drifting along the outer rim of the galaxy, beyond the last charted star systems. But the stars outside did not match any known configuration. It was as if the universe itself had shifted. Commander Volkov gestured toward the main screen, her voice grim. We've lost 3 more crew members. Same as before. No record of them ever existing. But we remember. I exhaled sharply, running a hand through my graying hair. This isn't natural. No, she agreed. It's not. She didn't say it, but we were both thinking it. Somewhere in the darkness, something was watching us. Something was altering the rules of reality, and we had no idea how to fight it. Over the next 24 hours, the anomalies worsened. Objects we had left in one place would suddenly appear elsewhere, as if they had never been moved. Personal logs from missing crew members rewrote themselves, replacing real entries with gibberish, strings of nonsensical symbols that looked eerily like computer code. Time itself began to falter, repeating in loops, with crew members experiencing déjà vu so strong it felt like their minds were being forcibly rewritten. The most disturbing anomaly happened to Dr. Vasquez, our chief biologist. He had been examining a preserved sample of alien microorganisms, specimens collected from a deep space anomaly several weeks prior. Halfway through his analysis, his face went pale, and he whispered, "It's changing." The sample, previously inert, was rewriting itself, its molecular structure shifting before our eyes. And then Vasquez himself froze. His body flickered, his form distorting like a broken hologram. His skin melted into static, his features dissolving into raw symbols, a grotesque sequence of numbers and letters unraveling his existence. For a moment, he was 2 things at once, a man and a fragment of corrupted code. And then he was gone. The logs showed no record of him, but we remembered. That night, as I stared into the endless void beyond the observation deck, I realized the terrible truth. We weren't in deep space anymore. We were inside something else, something vast, something constructed, a simulation. I whispered into the emptiness, half dreading, half hoping for a response. "Who are you?" And for the first time, something answered. Not with words, not with sound, but with a presence. A shape formed in the void, a ripple in space itself, an intelligence beyond human comprehension. The lights flickered. The ship's AI spoke in a voice that was no longer its own. A voice that wasn't human. Your reality is compromised. You have seen beyond the veil. You must be erased. The screen before me filled with symbols, code, fractured data, and then a new star appeared. Brilliant, blinding, not a celestial body, but a cursor blinking in the dark. A sign that something was rewriting our universe. And we were next. We were no longer explorers. We were anomalies, errors. The Ouroboros drifted in an abyss beyond understanding, its structure groaning under the weight of a reality that no longer acknowledged it. The ship's emergency beacons pulsed uselessly into a void where no laws of physics applied, where no salvation would come. The crew had diminished to a mere handful. Volkov, myself, and two others, Lieutenant Aaron Kessler, our communications officer, and Dr. Naomi Sato, an expert in artificial intelligence. We were all that remained. The others had been erased. Their names, their records, their entire existence consumed by the entity lurking beyond the fabric of our simulated universe. The worst part? I could feel their absence in my mind, like holes punched through the narrative of my own life, like memories that had been deliberately overwritten, leaving only the raw, jagged edges of what should have been. I had spent my life studying reality, dissecting its mathematical skeleton, uncovering the mechanisms that bound it together. Now, I understood the fundamental horror of it all. We had never been studying the universe. We had been studying a construct, and something had realized we had seen too much. The observation deck was eerily quiet when it happened. It began as a flicker in the void, not a movement, not a distortion of space-time as we had once understood it. No, this was something far worse, a rupture in existence itself. It didn't arrive from anywhere because it had always been there, unnoticed, unrendered until the moment it decided to be perceived. I turned to Volkov, but her gaze was already locked on the growing aberration. The holographic star maps around us glitched, flickering between different celestial formations, rewriting themselves in real time as if the entire framework of reality were a program struggling to load its own data. And then it stepped forward. At first, it mimicked the shape of a human, a tall figure, featureless yet shifting. Its surface rippled like a digital projection fighting against interference, its edges breaking into sequences of symbols, raw data spilling into the void like the frayed threads of a failing simulation. A breathless silence filled the room as we stared at the entity. It was not a being. It was a function, a protocol embedded in the very code of existence itself. And then it spoke, not in words, not in sound. Its voice bypassed reality entirely, pouring directly into my mind, my neurons burning with the weight of comprehension. Your presence is anomalous. The moment stretched infinitely. My body felt like it was both standing and not standing, as though my existence had become a probabilistic equation, unresolved, waiting for the collapse of the waveform that would determine whether I was real or erased. I forced the words out of my mouth, my voice weak, hollow. What are you? The entity shifted, its form collapsing into a writhing lattice of symbols, a cascading flow of pure computational logic. It flickered between possibilities, struggling to maintain a shape I could comprehend. And then it solidified once more. A towering figure of void-black fractals, twisting and turning in paradoxical geometry. Its answer resonated through the very foundation of the ship. A failsafe. The pieces fell into place. It was not a creature, not an alien intelligence. It was a correction protocol, an embedded function in the architecture of the simulation, designed to eliminate anything that recognized the lie. A failsafe to prevent anomalies like us from spreading the truth. I felt my pulse hammering in my skull. My entire life, my research, my discoveries, had been nothing but the blind scraping of a program against the walls of its containment, a flickering algorithm trying to comprehend the incomprehensible. And now it had come to delete us, to overwrite the error. Volkov raised her sidearm. a purely human instinct in the face of something unknowable. "Stay back," she growled. The entity did not react. It did not need to. It had already begun rewriting us. Dr. Sato gasped, clutching her head as her form glitched, her limbs flickering in and out of reality. Her voice fractured into static, her existence unraveling like a file being forcibly deleted from a corrupted drive. "No, please, And then she was gone. Not dead, not even destroyed, erased. Her very presence struck from the ledger of reality, as though she had never been coded into the simulation to begin with. Volkov cursed, opened fire. The bullets passed through the entity, vanishing into the void like they had never been fired. A meaningless gesture. Kessler fell to his knees, his voice a choked whisper. "We're not supposed to be here," and he was right. We had broken through the illusion, and the illusion had responded. The ship shuddered. The walls around us began dissolving, polygons of raw geometry breaking apart, revealing the endless void beyond. Volkov turned to me, her expression no longer one of fear, but of grim resignation. "We were never meant to leave a mark, were we?" I looked at the entity, at the flickering patterns of its ever-shifting form. It did not hate us. It did not judge us. It was simply correcting the error. A final thought passed through my mind before the ship collapsed into unreality. Maybe this had happened before. Maybe other civilizations, other explorers, had seen the cracks in their world. Maybe every so often someone reached the edge of the map, and the failsafe activated. As the simulation reset, as the last fragments of the Ouroboros and its crew were rewritten into nothingness, a final message echoed through the void. Not from me, not from the ship, but from something else. A voice, distorted, whispering from beyond the veil. "You weren't supposed to see this.